if, you know, you can profit off of us, but not support us as human beings, that means you don't care about us, that you're just using us for money. Like, just do the bare fucking minimum, please. Like, don't talk about your popcorn on Instagram, okay, when we're dying. Thank you. Hi. I didn't want to have to make this video, but here we are. Today is Sunday, April 4th, or Easter Sunday, if you celebrate that. And about 2.5 weeks ago, on March 16th, there was a terrible shooting in Atlanta. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, but if you haven't, 6 of the 8 people killed were Asian women. And this is just the latest in a long series of attacks on the Asian American community. And this one hurt. It hurt a lot. But what was so amazing was afterwards, there was a huge outpouring of love and support for the Asian community with hashtag Stop Asian Hate, hashtag Stop AAPI Hate, especially from the book community. There was an overwhelming response from a lot of readers, a lot of people specifically on Twitter, a lot of this, and authors of color, some white authors as well, and just uplifting AAPI authors and the Asian community as a whole. Now, what I did start to notice, just kind of offhand, I wasn't looking for it, it just was, I noticed it, was that there were certain authors who were staying silent, who were not saying anything. And so, here we are. Now, the reason these authors' silence stuck out to me so much is because these were authors who had written books with the main character being Asian, or just their book really utilized a lot of Asian aesthetics to the point where it basically was an Asian story. The interesting fact is that all of these authors are not Asian, are not AAPI, and they're all white. And so I waited a couple days after, because it was a very intense week for me, and I know for a lot of people in the AAPI community. So I waited, and then I sent them a message on Twitter, on Instagram, because these authors were not in blackout mode. It's not like they weren't using their social media. They were. They just, couldn't be bothered to tweet hashtag Stop Asian Hate, not once. They couldn't retweet anything. Not a single fucking retweet. Not even a like. And yes, I scrolled through all of their likes. Not even Insta story post. So these authors I reached out to because as a reader, I was concerned. Now, out of the authors that I reached out to, there was one author who did reach out back to me. This was after a little bit of time, but I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they didn't see it because they were an international author. So the American news maybe wasn't as full frontal for them. But, I do not want to send them hate. They did, as soon as they kind of heard what was going on, they shared donation links. They said they were happy to. So I'm just going to take them at face front and just believe them. However, for these other authors, I would like to get into it. And we're going to talk about it. And so that's what this video is going to be today. It's not really going to be a video about, me dragging these authors down, with the exception of one that we're going to talk about that has been bugging me for a while, and I feel like I need to talk about it. But overall, I do not want you guys to send hate to these authors. I just really hope that these authors are able to kind of look and at what they've done, that kind of stuff, and like change, and hopefully going forward, just be a little bit more transparent with their audience. But first, I would just like to talk a little bit about just the background of what it means, and why it's so significant that there's so much anti-Asian violence right now, because this is not just something that came up out of nowhere. It's something, it's a huge thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that first. Now, if you did not know, America is a racist country. It's been that way for lots of people of color since day one. And yes, it is trending towards getting better, but we still have a lot of work to do. Now, if you look back to some of the first Chinese immigrants, they were forced to work on the railroad. They were highly demeaned and viewed as cheap labor and easy to replace. And, with the Japanese Americans, we faced the internment camps not even 100 years ago, because there was such an anti-Asian sentiment at the time because of World War II that they took, America took its own citizens and put them in camps to punish them for something that they didn't do. And then even last year, when Donald Trump was our president and we had coronavirus raging on, he decided to call it the China virus, the Kung flu. And what did we see? We saw that there was a lot of his supporters who took that to heart and then went and attacked Asian people. There are many, many stats about the rise of anti-Asian violence. And my job right now is not to teach you or educate you. Like, I could get into the statistics, I could get into the very, very long history of all this anti-Asian racism, but honestly, that's on you. If you did not know about any of these things that I'm talking about, that's on you, and you need to do the research and just uncover it for yourself, because I'm not a scholar. I am a writer and a reader, and so I cannot educate you on systemic racism. But what I can talk about is my personal experience, and so that's what I'm going to do. So my grandmother is Japanese. She moved to America after marrying my grandfather, and even at that time, my life was impacted by white supremacy because my grandmother refused to teach my mom and her two brothers any Japanese because she wanted them to fit in, be more American. And so at that moment, I lost a huge portion of my culture that I could have today, if it wasn't for trying to fit in. And when I was a kid, I would do everything I could to try to fit in because kids are cruel, kids are mean, and they would, tell me that I ate dogs, that, how could I do bad on the test? Because, Asians are supposed to be so smart. And then, kids, of course, would think that it was funny when they did, pulled their eyes back and then said, ching chong, ching chong. So, I always felt, as a kid, I felt ashamed of being Asian because I didn't have anybody around me who looked like me, really, who was like telling me, hey, it's cool, it's okay. But no, I knew other Asian kids, but most of the time the kids were very mean. And I wanted to be like them so that they would stop making fun of me. And so I know that, as a mixed race person, I am not, fully steeped in my original culture, because I've lost a lot of it. And I just want to say to other people watching who are of mixed race, like, you are valid in who you are and what you are. And you don't have to try to twist yourself to try to fit in, because I still feel like I don't fit in anywhere. I don't fit in with white American culture. And I don't feel like I fit in with Japanese culture because I haven't really... I don't know. So I don't feel American white enough. I don't feel Asian enough, so I don't know what I feel. But I just know that, like, this is a problem. This is a situation that I know thousands of other people feel. It's because America tries to tell kids from the second that they're in school that there's one right way to be American, and there's no one right way to be American. You can be whoever you want to be, and your culture is valid. You are valid. What isn't valid is people who try to tear you down and make fun of you. And a lot of that is built from stereotypes, because that is something we're also going to talk about today, is stereotypes play a huge role in prejudice. Like, all the reasons that I got made fun of for looking Asian, for being Asian in school, was because of these fucking stereotypes. And a lot of them are from media. You have like the sexy geisha in movies. You have like the smart Asian. You have the Asians who speak broken English, and people laugh at their broken English because knowing more than one language is so funny. Actually, no, they're smarter than you because you only know one. But and there's so many harmful stereotypes. And I really, it's very heartening to see people really talking about this and taking this seriously now. Because, a lot of the times, growing up, it was just like, take a joke. Like, why can't you take a joke? It's funny. And I couldn't see what the joke was. And that's why watching these attacks has been so difficult for me, because I can very easily see the root of hatred and why it's caused so many people to be hurt. Even last year when Trump was saying the China virus, the Kung flu, people were laughing. Even my own family was laughing and saying, oh, it's just a joke. Obviously it's fucking not, because so many people have been harmed because of that. And I was watching the news the other day, and there was this woman, and you must have seen it. It went around Twitter as well. And she was like 79 years old, and she was beaten near to death by just a random person who just decided that day that he was going to walk out and beat up somebody. And I watched that, and like that, she reminded me of my grandma, and thank God that my grandparents just stay inside and don't really go anywhere. But You know, if this was normal times, if COVID wasn't a thing, like if she was just walking to the grocery store, would some random person just decide that because of the way she looks that like he can like just beat her to death? Like that's terrible. And so words have consequences, and stereotypes have effects on people, especially children and growing up. And what do children do? They read YA. And so when you have these stereotypes persisting in the entertainment, in the content they consume, they internalize that without knowing about it. And it's about damn time that we talk about it. But the first author that I would like to talk about is Miss Marissa Meyer. So you might know Marissa Meyer from her wildly popular YA young adult series, the Lunar Chronicles, which include Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. It's a quadrilogy, and it's a series of kind of like fairy tale sci-fi retellings. The reason I included Marissa Meyer was because of Cinder, and as well as her new novel that's being published called Instant Karma. The novel Cinder is set in this futuristic sci-fi Asian city where it uses a lot of like Asian aesthetics, and Cinder herself is also Asian. And so I'm just going to read briefly from an essay written by Chloe Gong, who is a Gen Z Asian author. Her book, These Violent Delights, came out last year, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend you read it. But so in Chloe Gong's essay, she talks about like kind of techno-futurism and how like it's very kind of, you know, cyberpunk uses this a lot, where they imagine a future of, you know, Asian stylistics, and why that is kind of problematic in a sense, because a lot of the time with bleak sci-fi, with Asian aesthetics, it correlates like Asian excellence with, you know, the downfall of like civilization or making things worse, which isn't great, obviously. But then also, specifically, what I wanted to talk about in Chloe's essay and with Cinder is the fact that a lot of the times cyborgs are Asian. And, you know, just quoting from Chloe's essay, every time a cyborg appears in a piece of work and is represented as cold and unfeeling, as someone who loses more humanity with the more robotic parts they receive and become more efficient, we are pushed to believe that relying on technology makes someone subhuman, and we are pushed to consider Asians who resemble technology in their work as subhuman or different. And I think that's really interesting to think about in regards with this book, because although, you know, Marissa Meyer, she tried her best to be very inclusive and, you know, with these books, you know, one of the other princesses characters, Winter, she's Black. She is kind of a retelling of Snow White. And so I do want to believe that Marissa Meyer, you know, at her core was trying to just be inclusive and do all this kind of stuff. But when you don't have like Asian people doing sensitivity reads of your very Asian book, you know, things like this can slip through, and you end up creating another stereotype, or just representing us in a weird way. But just beyond that, Marissa Meyer has not said anything about Stop Asian Hate or any of the Asian violence that has been occurring. And so I'm going to say, what I'm going to say to all of these authors and about all of these authors is that if, you know, you can profit off of us, but not support us as human beings, that means you don't care about us, that you're just using us for money. So I even believe that you can write cultures in a respectful way if you really put in the research, and if that's something you really feel like you need to include. But your care about those people can't just extend to what you write about them, because it's always going to be better for a, Asian author to talk about their experience and like with their culture. And also, speak up when shit happens to us, okay? Like, just do the bare fucking minimum, please. Don't talk about your popcorn on Instagram, okay, when we're dying. Thank you. And then also with Marissa Meyer's newest book, Instant Karma, there are very problematic elements to it where she's borrowing from, I believe, Indian culture and the concept of karma and things like that. I personally do not know a lot about the book because I have not read it. So there are some other great reviewers out there who have talked about this issue in more detail. This is a trend that I'm kind of seeing where authors are starting to borrow interesting things from other cultures without doing a lot of research or consultation with the people who are a part of those cultures. So stop. And I do just want to say that I personally read the Lunar Chronicles and really liked them. However, that doesn't detract from the kind of problematic content and depictions and representations contained within them. I think you can definitely enjoy something, but then still point out the issues with it. I mean, if you've been on book Twitter, Harry Potter is very much the same. There's just, you can enjoy something and then still be very critical about it and its intent and its impact, because whatever the author intends is not necessarily the impact that it's going to have. And so I think we do have to consider both when we're talking about things like this. So the next author I reached out to is Rainbow Rowell. And if you guys didn't know about Rainbow Rowell, she wrote a book called Eleanor and Park. Eleanor and Park is a love story between a girl and a Korean-American boy. And it's their love story. And people have had problems with the way that Rainbow Rowell depict Park. And I am not Korean, so I do not want to speak for the book's representation being accurate or not. I do know that there have been some Korean reviewers that have enjoyed the depictions of it, but then also people who have had huge problems with it. So the quality and kind of the representation is not really what I'm going to talk about. I just want to also just mention the fact that Rainbow Rowell has said nothing. One of her most popular books that she's ever written, Eleanor and Park, is being turned into a huge movie. I think they're going through casting right now. It was a big deal when it was announced. So she is profiting off of Asian lives and Asian stories. But again, when we're in peril, nothing. The third author I would like to talk about is Miss Megan Crew. Now, she wrote a book called Mortal Song, which came out a number of years ago. I have not read it, and apparently she researched it, but multiple reviews have kind of said that, if she did do research, it didn't really show in the way that she kind of used the language and the story. And so I can't comment on the story itself. It's like a Japanese-inspired fantasy. It's a standalone. So I can't comment on the story itself, but what I can comment on is the fact that Megan Crew has been very active on both Instagram and Twitter, and nothing. With these first three authors that I reached out to, I do kind of maybe want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Fuck that. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it is possible that, their team could have, been in charge of their social media, or they had contractually obligated tweets they had to send, and they just did that and left and didn't look on the internet at all. You know, it's a world where that is possible. You know, I am not them. I do not personally know them. I cannot speak for them, so I don't know. But what I do know is that they said nothing, and they have profited from Asian lives and Asian stories. So to me, their silence is very fucking loud. And that brings us to the final author that we are going to discuss today. And his silence is the loudest of them all. And that is Mr. J. Kristoff. Now we're going to talk about J. Kristoff differently, because he had a different response than the other authors did. Well, I had one who I'm not going to mention by name in this video reach out to me very positively, and then I had 3 who just ignored me. You know, I checked, and I can't you know, I don't know if they opened it or not. With Twitter, you know, you can shut off your routine. So I don't know if they opened it or read it. On Instagram, it just says sent. So, you know, maybe they haven't seen my message, and maybe if they do, they'll reach out to me, and, you know, maybe they will decide to say something. But with J. Kristoff, he read my message. He saw my DM, which was very, like, I haven't shared the messages with you guys, but I will now. I'll read you the message that I sent to J. Kristoff. So I sent to Mr. J. Kristoff. I said, "Hey Jay, just wanted to reach out to you. The Lotus War trilogy was one of my favorite trilogies growing up, and I loved Yukiko's story. I just was wondering if you could tweet out #StopAsianHate or make a statement about this week's tragedy. There has been such an outpouring of support from people in the book community, and because your novels utilize Asian aesthetics, I think it would mean a lot for fans to hear a statement of support from you. Much love, Blake." Scene. Like, you can even see it. I'll put it up on the screen as well. But, yeah, so just straight up ignored. So I think it's very safe to say that he does not care about Asian lives. Why do I say this? Oh, because I read his books. I've actually read a number of his books. There was a time in high school when I thought he was one of my favorite authors. And this is an issue that I think we're going to have to scope out a little bit and talk about publishing, because publishing made me very, very aware of, you know, his book Storm Dancer when I was in high school. And, you know, I was in high school, I was a teenager, and there was this cool sounding book that was being pushed at me. And so I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go read it. So I did. I didn't know until about book 2 that the author wasn't Japanese, you know, because I was like, why, you know, who knows why he woke up and decided to write a steampunk Japanese fantasy. I do want to say, I'm editing this video right now, I actually, when I read the books in high school, I did really, really enjoy them. And sadly enough, that was one of the first times that I remember reading a book with an Asian main character, which, I should have looked for more books, when I was younger. But I think it's very telling that that was the first book that was kind of pushed upon me, like, where was the marketing budget for other books, for other Asian authors at that time? Like, there was not one. And so this Asian trilogy written by a white man was one of the first that I became aware of. So, like, yes, there are Asian books out there, and you can look for them and you can find them. But also, I think it's very indicative of what publishers are doing or were doing at the time, where they were pushing Asian stories by non-Asian people, which is really fucking weird. And I'm glad publishers are now more on the side of authors of color, but it's still something that we are dealing with, and something that, you know, we need to support our Asian authors more, is the moral of the story. Okay, let's jump back into the video. What kind of annoys me a lot is kind of his response to criticism about the book. You know, there was a controversy at the time that the book was published. He just kind of ignored it. And when people asked him what kind of research he did for the book, because obviously, you know, if you're writing a entire Japanese fantasy series, you would do some research, right? He said he watched a lot of anime and drank sake, which, that's so fucking infuriating. Like, are you kidding me? You can't. And you know, a huge part of, you know, the criticism he received for those novels was the fact that he just used the language wrong. He peppered kind of Japanese language throughout the books without really any knowledge of how they were supposed to be, like, used. And, you know, if he had, you know, like some Japanese sensitivity readers, you know, to comb through, like, there is a universe where I think this, you know, if he put a lot of time and effort, because this is a story he really, really wanted to tell, and this is the only way he could do it, that he could do it. But, you know, he didn't. He drank sake and watched anime. And then also when people were coming at him for, you know, not being Japanese, he basically said, so it's not actually Japan, it's a fantasy world. Okay, so then why are you using Japanese characters, Japanese names, Japanese myths and monsters from Japanese mythology? Like, it's very much an almost one-to-one but he hand waved it off, you know, gaslighting these Asian book reviewers who were trying to very nicely talk with him about it. And that's been kind of a theme with J. Kristoff. You saw it in with the Nevernight books when they came out. There were Pacific Islanders who were saying, hey, J. Kristoff, this depiction of Maori culture is not great because of the Dwayarmi that he had in his Nevernight books, and the way he chose to, like, depict, like, their tattoos. And J. Kristoff was like, whatever, it's fantasy. And people were like, well, no, you were very obviously inspired. And then in another interview, he, like, confirmed that he was inspired by the Pacific Islanders. But then when it comes time to, like, actually talk to people from that culture, he's like, no, it's fantasy. So this kind of gaslighting of people of color is just kind of par for course for J. Kristoff. And there was an issue where he went after a black booktuber last year and sent his fans after her. So it's kind of deliberately malicious at this point, almost, because, you know, people have tried to start dialogues with J. Kristoff, and he has just ignored them and said, no, my books are badass, like, that's cool. But then it's like, okay, but you're also sexualizing teenagers, and, like, that's weird, and you're utilizing cultures in, like, a really kind of messed up way. It was more messed up, his response. It was just, the whole thing is kind of a mess. And just the fact that, like, you know, I was still hoping to give all of these authors, and especially J. Kristoff, I was like, I want you to, like, just to, you know, do the bare fucking minimum, please. Like, acknowledge us, you know, that we're going through a tragedy, and it would be so easy for you to do that. You have a huge following, a huge fan base. If you tweet one thing, if you tweet a donation link, so many people are going to see that. Those organizations could get a boost, they could get help, they could actually improve people's lives. Instead, you just choose to remain silent and tweet about your sex vampire book, which has gotten 4 different physical arcs. And then, people of color, authors of color, their books only get like badly formatted e-arcs, and that's about it. And they don't get 4 different fucking special editions of their book before release. And even after release, you see these books like the Sarah J. Maas books, the Court of Fairies and Fucking. They've gotten like how many different editions, and then you have people like N.K. Jemisin, an amazing Black author who all 3 books in her Broken Earth trilogy won Hugos, and they have 1 edition. And that's no special edition, no fancy stuff, no publishers sending like goodies, and so this is where I'm going to zoom out and just say, I think the publishing industry pays authors of color absolute dirt. And it is disgusting, honestly, the way that they will bend over backwards for their white authors and for those fan bases, but then won't do the same for authors of color. And so, there's so much that, I could talk about. I could take, a larger video. But, today I just, specifically wanted to talk about anti-Asian racism, because it's just sad, because it seems like it's almost getting worse. A couple weeks ago, there was like a punch an Asian challenge in San Francisco. Like, what the fuck? That's what this shit has come to. We're a challenge. A tick off a list to get punched in the fucking face. Please just respect us. If you see a donation link, retweet it. Tweet out Stop Asian Hate. Act like you care about us instead of just profiting off of us. And I'm so I'm kind of like tired of the negativity in this video. It's just exhausting to talk about like the ways that Asians have just been disrespected. It's really sad. And heartbreaking. And so, we're going to end on a note of positivity. So I'm going to link as many AAPI booktubers and content creators in the description below, because I do want to uplift these people, our people, our community, because I think right now, the last couple weeks have shown me that the people who do care are going to care, and they're going to care really, really loudly. You have amazing authors like Katie Zhao, who is just been constantly tweeting about her experience and isn't being silent about the discrimination she's been facing in publishing. And that's brave, and that's the kind of content and bravery we need to see from all authors, I think. And I'm not saying that all authors have to, speak about everything, but, when you have such a big thing going on, the least you can do is a retweet. Literally, the least you can do. I'd like to share this quote from an essay that Katie Zhao wrote, and it's about just kind of what being Asian in America has felt like in this last year. There is a very specific form of exhaustion that's unique to the Asian American experience during this pandemic. It's quarantine fatigue, compounded by a consistent fear of you and your community falling victim to hate crimes that the media largely refuses to acknowledge. White people who complain about quarantine exhaustion can go on a walk outside without worry about being attacked because of their race. Asian people experience the same quarantine exhaustion, but aren't afforded the same luxury of going outside without fear. Furthermore, when Asian people do vocalize fear of being targeted by racists, We're often gaslit. We're told that our feelings aren't valid, that we don't face racism, and that we don't matter. Whether we beg for help or endure this pain in silence, whether we profess undying loyalty for this country or not, some days it truly feels like it doesn't matter. Being Asian in America, especially right now, means being invisible to the media and law, but hyper-visible to white supremacy. And that, I think, about sums it up. And so, yeah, uplift AAPI content creators, uplift AAPI authors, show your love and support for the Asian community, whether you're just an average Joe or, you know, a big author. It doesn't matter. And at the same time, don't just stop there. Support all people of color, because, you know, people of color do face discrimination in wildly different ways. If you're showing up for the Asian community, make sure you show up for the Black community, because Black lives matter, and they're still being treated with such horrendous indignities every single day. So please help and support the Black community, as well as the Latinx community in America, as well as the indigenous community in America, as well as all the people of color who are constantly being told by white supremacists that they don't matter, that they're not experiencing racism, that they are, you know, just being crazy. We're not crazy, we're being harmed. And so I'm sorry for this long video where I've just kind of talked about a lot of things that have been on my mind, but I felt like I needed to talk about them because it feels like I needed to say it. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you so much for watching. And if you would like to, you can subscribe. I'm going to be posting my March wrap-up and my February, or my April TBR later this week. I just can't do it right now because I am just exhausted. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and stop Asian hate.